Good morning, I'm Ruth Williamson, and this is 1 Million Cups Sherman. It's May 30th, and we're here for our weekly 1 Million Cups event. Our sponsors are Douglas Distributing. Brad Douglas is one of our organizers and provides all of our collateral and printed material. I'm Ruth Williamson with Ideation Station. Our coffee is provided by Beam Me Up, and our technology by TechWave, JJ McGrath. And we're going to present a video about 1 Million Cups.
1 Million Cups is a weekly educational program developed by the Kauffman Foundation.
It's a place where our entrepreneurs can come and connect within the community.
There's a real kind of vibe or a real energy here that's about supporting entrepreneurs.
We have two presenters each week, two entrepreneurs. They come and tell about their journey. They each have about 6 minutes to present.
You're telling people what you're up to, and you're essentially getting feedback from them.
And there's about 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A.
All the questions that they asked us really got us thinking about new ways to think about our business.
It was good just to be able to get that feedback from the rest of the community.
So over the years, we've added more cities. There's a great energy here to see what's happening across the country.
Last question for you, what can we as a community do for you?
The what can we as a community do to help you question is what really coalesces the community around every single presenter.
When somebody applies to present to 1 Million Cups, they're instructed to watch a series of videos through the Kauffman Founders School website.
It's invaluable information for someone who's founding a startup.
I felt better prepared, I felt more confident, and I think a little more focused than I would have been otherwise. And I not watched the videos of the founder schools. It was a great way to prepare.
I really like the educational component of 1 Million Cups because it does create that open forum.
You're going to hear great ideas that will help you start thinking even more about what you want to do with your business.
What I've learned from other entrepreneurs is very, very valuable.
The cool thing about 1 Million Cups is that you're amongst other people like yourself. Just hearing someone talk about their startup, it just was magical to think, wow, there's other people out there like myself.
Sitting in a room of other people that have ideas too, it helps people to leave thinking, you know what, my idea is worth something, it's worth pursuing, it's worth going after it. Even if it looks like a challenge, I should still go out and try to do it.
And basically that's the message of 1 Million Cups, is to network with other entrepreneurs and really use their experience and their knowledge to help your startup flourish. Today we have Richard Chowning. Richard is from Denison, and he is the Africa Mentor and has a website, africamentor.com, and is starting a new aspect of his business. And Richard, I'd like to welcome you up here to do your 6-minute presentation and tell us what you're up to.
Thank you. Well, I want to talk about the new phase of my Africa Mentor business, and that is a cross-cultural communication for business course that I'll be offering. I'm going to offer it online as well as in person, and also be able to deliver it over Skype or WhatsApp or whatever kind of technology the person on the other end might be wanting to receive it in. You might ask, why a course in cross-cultural communication for business? To me, that's obvious. It might not be as obvious to everybody, but we live in a diverse country today. Who is an American? You can't just show a face of one person anymore. That is who an American is. We come from many, many different backgrounds, many different cultures, many different viewpoints of life. You may have a political outlook that slants you in one direction, whether you want to favor this diversity that we have in this country today or not. But as a business person, you can't afford to not communicate with people that are different than yourselves. If you do not possess the skills to be able to communicate with people who are different than you, your business is just not going to succeed. You may be able to have a very small business where it's just your family and you all come from the same background, same part of the USA, same ethnicity, and you speak the same language. But when you add employees, they may be different. For sure, you cannot control who's coming in the door as your customers. They come from various backgrounds. People who are your distributors who bring in the products or the services that you may be using in your business come from different backgrounds, and you need to be able to communicate effectively with them. You have regulators that come in who come from different backgrounds, who are going to be looking at your business and testing to see whether you're following all of the standards that are necessary for your type of business. They come from a different background than yourselves. There could and there very well may be a communication problem that you have in the beginning. You may not realize that it's there, but you may end up being frustrated because you're not able to communicate what you want to communicate, or they're not receiving what you thought they were going to receive from you, from your verbal communication or from your actions. There are real problems that happen in businesses because people are not able to communicate with people different than themselves. If we go to international business and the international business scale, the statistic is that 70% of American businesses that try to go international, they fail. And I know of at least 60 academic papers, peer-reviewed academic papers, that document that most international businesses that fail because of the lack of cultural awareness. They go in and expect everybody to do things the way they do them, whether that's American or whether that's German or whatever. Going international, if they don't adapt to the culture of the people where they're going, they're liable to fail. I'm sure that my theory is that that's the impact that we have in the U.S. today with our diversity. That if you do not know how to relate to people different than yourselves, you're going to have some kind of frustration. It's going to cause burnout. You're not going to want to continue with your business. It may be because you're not communicating well with people. You may think they are not smart, or they're being smart-aleck at you in the way that they communicate. And this lack of being able to communicate breaks relationships and causes businesses to fail. As well, it may be causing problems in your branding. Your branding may be suited to who you are, but is it really suited to the diversity of customers that come into your office? So we're talking about a cross-cultural communication course is what I'm going to be offering. And I'll just kind of run through what the course will look like. The first part of it, the first module, is just what is culture? Why are people different from one another, their outlook of life? What about worldview? And I'll discuss that. Next, we'll talk about the importance of being able to communicate with people different than yourselves. Then we'll walk into understanding your own culture. To be able to communicate well with people different than yourself, you need to understand who you are makes up the type of communication that you share with other people. What my education level is, what part of the country I come from. I'm a Californian. It took me a long time to understand how to deal with Texan people. Next, the other part of it is I need to understand my own business culture. My own business culture. And what does my operation manual look like? In that operation manual, am I catering only to one culture or to other cultures as well? I also need to understand the people who I'm communicating with. What is their background? That's the next module. What is their business background? Understanding the diversity between just two people, our culture, our business, my culture, my business. Those things don't often match. So how do we then solve the problem? There is something that is new nowadays. It's being called the cultural IQ, the cultural quotient. And that is ability to be able to communicate well with other people. Why would you want to communicate? Is that my time is up?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. So I have
6 minutes
I'm
isn't
talking
very
a lot.
long. So Richard,
Let me open up the
I've seen a map that talks about how many countries we have in the United States, and I think it's somewhere between 8 and 12, so I'll say 10. You know, there's the, and we may think of those as regions, but they're culturally different, not only because of the origins of the populations that came in there, but geographic distribution of people and things like that, and it really follows the migration from the East Coast to the West Coast, or how people came onto the West Coast. So would your course benefit, or would you need a different series or different modules to address these regional differences? Because I know when I had my first job and had to communicate with people in Teaneck, New Jersey from Dallas, Texas, it took some learning.
Yeah, the course would cover that if I was giving the course one-on-one, or if I was doing it over Skype, where I could talk to them about the particular culture that's in their area. But we live in a country that is so diverse, you can't talk about all the different cultures and get much depth into it at all. But just to raise the cultural awareness, this person's coming in the door, this communication problem we may be having, may not because they don't understand me. It's a matter of, there's a cultural difference there, and I need to step back and realize, now, what have I learned in this course, in this study of cross-cultural communication, that's going to help me communicate to this person better? And if I have the time, is to make a plan how I'll approach them the next time. But if not, I've got some basic skills that'll cue me into how do I approach this person? Is this a person that I want to put my hands on? They come from an Asian background, maybe I'm not going to be putting my hands on them. If they're a Nigerian, I'm going to be hugging them and maybe even holding their hand while I'm walking through the store with them. Those those differences. Now, if you're a specific enclave of people that's different than yourself, you really want to take a deep dive into that particular culture.
How do you distinguish between culture and personality?
Well, I guess there's different ways of looking at it. You could say that when you're talking about culture, some people tend to stereotype people. Hispanic people all act this way. African American people all act this way. All Asian people act this way. There are some generalities you can talk about in culture, but there are personality differences in all of those. Mm-hmm. But people may be all of the same background in your business. They may be of the same ethnicity, but there's a big difference between we baby boomers and the millennials. And that's a cultural difference. May look the same, speak the same language, sort of. But then there's,
So most of the people that I see attempt this trajectory that you're on, they usually do a book, a website, have social networking and social media resources. What's your strategy for this aspect of your business?
Yeah, well, I already have a website that is dedicated towards doing business with Africa. So and that's where I spend most of my business time, talking to people in Africa and having American businesses, European businesses, Africans in the diaspora, going back to Africa to do business. But I'll be having this course online, so that'll be the resource. I would rather, it's my preference to deliver it face-to-face, where I can understand who are the customers that they're dealing with, what is their own personal background, the business person, and try and give them the tools, the cultural skill sets that they need for their particular business. I would rather do it face-to-face, but I do have those online.
Mm-hmm.
So who's your target audience? Who are you trying to teach here?
Business people, business owners, managers, those specifically. I think there is a big need for it in government as well, in local government, and with the regulators and the people who go out and visit the business people. But government is less open to this kind of thing than the person who's trying to make their business succeed, trying to make some money. They're motivated. To learn culture and to communicate with people different than yourself is hard work. It's not simple. There's no simple answers to any of this. And so you have to be highly motivated, because it's going to take you some time and some real changes in your own life and the way that you share with people.
And is it going after business for, if I were to say, I want to do business in Africa, we come to you to help teach us how to work with Africa. That's what you're trying to model.
That is my main part of my business, helping people start up businesses in Africa. I work with entrepreneurs, businesses, and with traders in the problems that they're having trying to enter the African marketplace, and I help them with resources and relationships that I have, research, as well as these cross-cultural communication skill sets.
What are your qualifications for doing that?
I went to Africa when I was 22 years old. Lived in Africa for 25 years, 16 years in Kenya. I lived out in rural, what people would call the bush. Things have changed in Africa. That was 1972 when I went. So I stayed in Kenya for 16 years. I came back and I taught in Abilene Christian University. I taught cross-cultural communications. I taught Swahili, taught African studies. And then after 9 years at Abilene Christian, I went back to Africa, this time to West Africa, the little country of Benin. I don't know if you all know that, between Ghana and Nigeria, there are two little French-speaking, former French colonies, Benin up against Nigeria and Togo up against Ghana. So I was in Benin then for 9 years. So that and my 7 years now with my own business, Africa Mentor, those are my qualifications.
And how are you gonna help to the organized, like governmental organization, governmental or other social or business group organization who handle businesses for the implementing like cross-cultural communications, stuff like that. What I've seen, like for example, here in Sherman, if I go like chamber networking, there are 70 people are there. Out of 70 people, there is not even like 3% from like from different cultural background.
Yeah.
And if you go the number wise in the business, here if you go wise, almost like 40-50 businesses, Hispanic business over here, like Mexican restaurant, this, that. But none of them are coming forward to speak, to tell who are they, what business they are doing, what they are exposing, That's the problem I feel. Like, I know culture is like, it's all the lifelong skill that we learn from, no matter who you are, where you are from, this, that. But another problem where it prevailing is problem of perception,
Sure.
Problem of perception, how to take these people, if they are staying here a long time, doing somehow like 10 years, 20 years, like restaurant business, but he couldn't come forward because none of them like the city or anything like helping them to come forward. Like I say, if any organization like chamber or something, they put some bilingual people to help them, go them, connect them, try to bring that. It gonna ultimately helps like local businesses,
Sure.
But
yeah, I guess this. It seems obvious from who's in this room right now. This is one of those kinds of forums that bring people from different backgrounds that are here in this community together. Other kinds of social networking like that will help. But for me in training people, I'm not sure that even the web is the first place that I'm going to meet potential customers. It may be just knocking on doors and visiting people in their businesses that are different. But what you're saying is exactly true. And I think it's more of a problem today and going to become even more of a problem in the next few years because, like it or not, the reality is we are becoming a polarized country. Around not just ethnicity, our political views and other things. And businesses can't afford to be viewed as only this cultural type of business. There's just not the base, at least in this community, for you to be centered on just reaching one particular culture. If we were in Dallas, well, it might be another story. The population might be big enough there to deal with it. But, whether you're, I can't say, non-American ethnicity, because American ethnicity now is just so diverse. But if you're different than myself, a Caucasian, you also need to understand my culture if I'm going to be one of your customers, if you want me as my customer, as your customer. So that kind of, both Caucasian business owners and people coming from other ethnicities both need to be aware of these cultural differences and to study and to acquire these skills of cross-cultural communication. Does that kind of answer where you're coming from? How to get people together, that's not what I'm trying to do with this course, but I agree with that 100%. My son is African American, adopted. I have African American grandchildren, spent all that time in Africa. I love diversity. I realize I'm in the minority with that opinion, and that is becoming, as I said, we're becoming more and more polarized. That's a political issue, but it impacts business.
So Richard, I think that honing in on your strategy, because it sounds like what you would love to do is more like coaching.
Yes, yeah.
What you would
African
love to
mentor.
do is
Yes.
more like coaching.
Yeah.
But in order to reach your coaching clients, the ones that will pay you, you're going to have a community building strategy. And I think that, we can work on that. We can test things locally and test things on the internet to find out how you build that sales funnel where first you have to attract people and then you have to convert them into clients. We all have to do that.
Sure.
And you have to build a strategy that does that. You have to test that sales funnel. And there's a little rule of thumb that's called do it 100 times.
Sure.
When you've done it 100 times, then you know how. You can't just do it 6 or 8 times and think that you know all the use case scenarios.
Sure.
So I think, after when we do some networking, we can talk about
Sure.
some of those things that we can do, to help build that out.
Sure.
But I do think, Rajendra, what you're talking about is, that he's also talking about is, even in Sherman, Texas, where you have a very minority community, things are changing where you can't just trade with a single community and be successful. And even in Dallas, there's a company called Fun Asia that has places to go and publications and things like that. But they're broader than because it's across cultural. Asia's big. When you're talking about Asia, it's big. It's a lot of communities.
Sure.
So I think you have to step through how you develop this strategy, and go through where the near-term targets, how can you prototype and experiment, how can you learn lessons from that, and then develop that marketing model.
I'm a lean startup proponent, and I really believe in this, planning and testing and reiterating and
Right.
planning again and testing. I have to do that. But I understand what you're talking about. I need to be more involved in this local community. I've been so involved for so many years in Africa.
Right.
And if I want to be successful here, particularly with this course for business people, I've got to be involved in the community in different ways.
And along with this, you can consult with a lot of different, the governmental bodies or business groups to modify the policy to bring together for cross-cultural,
Sure.
to boost the business, which ultimately helps to everybody,
Right.
So that might not help.
Sure. And don't read into what I'm saying that it's not good to have a business that centers on one culture, meaning a Mexican restaurant, huh? That you do fine quality Mexican food. You go in and the ambiance is all Mexican. But how do you treat the non-Hispanic customer who comes in, who's from a different culture? That's where that happens.
Both ways should be,
Yeah. Doesn't mean that you need to serve steak and potatoes in a Hispanic restaurant. It's a different.
Right. What kind of businesses are opening up business in Africa? What are they doing? Manufacturing?
Yeah, I can answer that a couple of different ways. For U.S. businesses, for their concern for doing business with Africa, about anything that you want to outsource can be outsourced to Africa these days. China and India practically own the market of outsourcing. But now in Africa, there are call centers, there are clothing manufacturers that will do bespoken, or you can design your own line of garments. They will produce them there for you, put your labels on them, that same kind of thing. Manufacturing of just about anything that you want done, they will do it to order, that type of thing. The other part of it is there's plenty of space in Africa today for American businesses to expand their own business onto the continent. For most products and services, there's a market for it. But you've got to be open for adapting and knowing that these customers in Africa are a whole lot different than American customers. Branding is really important when you do that as well. I heard recently of a story where a cereal company, a baby food cereal company, went to Africa, and the way they do it here in the States, you put a happy-looking baby on the box of this baby cereal because it looks like it's a contented baby. Well, the Africans, they package things with pictures of the ingredients. That baby was not communicating anything to them about what nutrition was inside of that. So you've got to adapt to it. Just about any kind of business, I would say that the kinds of businesses that are a little bit more difficult to get into in Africa today would surprise you. Technology is very, very competitive. These young entrepreneurs in Africa today are very, very skilled in just about every phase, from programming to presentation, all the different skills in coding. They're able to. They're on the cutting edge, as a matter of fact, of remote medicine, telemedicine, paying for things with your telephone, M-Pesa in Africa. I don't know if you know. They can walk in just about any store and just pay for things with their telephones. They're ahead of us. They've leapfrogged over a lot of things that we have that are legacy types of ways.
Legacy infrastructure is what becomes a barrier.
Yeah, it is. But any kind of green technology, boy, solar, wind, waste to energy, those kind of things are really needed. I am talking to a client right now, a young man in Seattle. He's of the diaspora. He's from Djibouti, but he's lived in Washington State, gone to school in Washington State. He's wanting to start a drone business in Africa for agriculture. Well, that's practically unknown, but it would be they could leapfrog over a lot of things by using these drones to spray and to survey and those kinds of things. So Africa is not a bunch of people living in mud huts, that people think. It's a whole lot different today.
Now, on your a wealth of information for business going to Africa. So why are you fiddling with these lessons? When you could be a consultant to say like Folgers or some company or a dozen companies that are in Africa, and get in good with them and coach their people instead of trying to get me to do something.
Yeah, well, that's where I would like to be. I would like to be consulting with Tyson. You know, I would like to be consulting with the bigger petroleum companies here that do work in Nigeria and Angola. That's where I would like to be. And I don't know from this presentation whether you can tell, but the CAM type things I don't do as well as this kind of give and take. And in an audience where I'm face to face with people, I can do a lot of teaching and get a lot of information and give people exercises to do that will train them in that kind of way. Why am I doing it here? I live here, and this is a place to polish some of those skills, I guess, in one way. In another way, I care about this community. And we live in just looking in here, a lot of you are brave people. From my perspective, being an outsider, even though I've been here 11 years, this community is rather closed. That people don't have a lot of broad experience in the world. When you tell them you've been to Europe, that is something a lot of people around here have never done, never experienced. You know, going to Dallas or Houston or going to Florida is a big deal. The eyes are not wide open. But the diversity is moving up here. And if you want the businesses to succeed, you've got to deal with people that are different than yourself. what you talked about, that is my target. That's where I want to be.
Okay.
Last question?
Our last question is, how can our community help you?
Well,
Got a list?
yes, I've got a card, and I would just like you to tell people about who I am, what my experiences are. It may well be that as I begin to talk with people, it probably will be. My experience is a business never ends up where it starts. It's always going to change. So as I get more exposure to the community as a person who has a vast different types of cultural experiences and wants to be able to help people understand those cultures, I'll find different ways. It may well be that this exposure may just bring more clients to me that I can say, I know where you can get your garments done in Africa for cheaper than you can get them done in China and India, and maybe even quicker, or whatever product that you're doing.
I have a little swag for you.
Oh,
A little One Man Cups t-shirt and mug.
Oh,
And
is
I
that
wanna-
where you got yours?
Yeah, he's one of our organizers. So I know there are probably people you want to network with after the meeting.
Sure.
And probably do some follow-up. And certainly I want to do that with you. I want to thank you for coming. And this is our 1 Million Cups Sherman event for May 30th. I've got the wrong date on there. And so we meet every week. We can have up to 2 presenters a week. I encourage everyone to apply. I encourage everyone to download the 1 Million Cups app and follow 1 Million Cups Sherman and apply to present. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. We have open networking from 8:30 to 9 before the meeting and then following the meeting as well. So when you come, invite people, set up some appointments and do some networking while you're here. Thanks, I'm Ruth Williamson with 1 Million Cups Sherman.